Fearless warrior spirit. From time to time during the dry and hot seasons of the year, wandering dhutanga monks pass through Baan Huay Sai, searching for secluded places to camp and meditate in solitude. The mountains and forests surrounding the village were areas of vast wilderness, forbidding and inhospitable. Wild animals roamed freely, and malevolent spirits were believed to reign supreme. The terrain remained a jungle, and fear kept it remote and sequestered. This made it an ideal place for wandering meditation monks to live and practice their ascetic way of life in solitude. Detached, reserved, and intent on renunciation, dhutanga monks hiked through the wilderness, often alone, along deserted trails. They sought secluded locations that offered body and mind a calm, quiet setting. A ridge, a cave, an overhanging cliff, places suitable for striving to attain the end of all suffering. Living a life entirely out of doors, the dhutanga monk constantly put himself at the mercy of the elements and vagaries of the weather. Living in harmony with his natural surroundings, a dhutanga monk's daily life featured nature's rich diversity: rocks and trees, rivers and streams, tigers, snakes, elephants, and bears. For his livelihood, he depended on collecting alms food in the small settlements that had sprung up at the jungle's edge. The Putai felt a common bond with the wandering ascetics and the fearless warrior spirit. Because of that, the monks easily found support for their lifestyle in Putai communities. Tapai's father was especially fond of the forest monks. True sons of the Buddha, he called them, with an appreciative smile. Energized by seeing them, he welcomed their arrival with childlike enthusiasm. In 1914, the arrival of Ajahn Sao Kantasilo, the renowned dhutanga master, transformed the spiritual landscape of Baan Huay Sai village life forever. Having come from afar, he and a small band of disciples simply wandered into the area on foot one day. They had been hiking for months, first crossing the Mekong River from Laos to Siam's Nakhon Phanom province, then trekking over the eastern hills of Sakon Nakhon and down through the Phupan wilderness to reach Mukdahan. Though he was 55 years old, Ajahn Sao walked entire days in the tropical heat, crossing the most arduous terrain with steady, effortless steps. When he and his group reached the vicinity of Baan Huay Sai village, the annual rains were just beginning. Cloud bursts and cooling showers were followed by lustrous sunshine illuminating the sky, while damp heat hugged the ground. Ajahn Sao knew that the changing climate beckoned him to search for a suitable site to spend the rain's retreat, an annual 3-month period of intensive meditation. Following the Buddha's instructions, monks ceased their wandering for the duration of the monsoon season to reside in one location under the protection of a roof. Ajahn Sao was first spotted in the humid, misty dawn when he entered the sleepy village, leading a column of figures dressed in ochre-colored robes. Walking barefoot and with an alms bowl slung across one shoulder, the monks appeared ready to receive what generosity the inhabitants had to offer: rice, pickled fish, bananas, smiles, and respectful bows. Stirred by the monks' serene, dignified appearance, the women, men, and children of the village scrambled to find some food to offer to the Dharma monks, all the while yelling back and forth to one another in their excitement. By the time Ajahn Sao and his monks walked past Tapai's house, her whole family stood expectantly along the dirt track at the front, waiting to place morsels of food in the monks' bowls and hoping to accumulate special merit by their actions. Eager to discover the identity of the new arrivals, Tapai's father, along with a few friends, followed the monks back to their temporary campsite in the nearby foothills. Although Ajahn Sao was venerated as a supreme master throughout the region, Pason and his friends had never met him face to face. Surprise turned into joy and excitement when they heard his name mentioned. Tapai's father resolved to have Ajahn Sao settle in the area, if only for the duration of the monsoon season. Well acquainted with the local terrain, fast-flowing streams and winding rivers, overchanging caves and rocky outcrops, open savanna and dense jungle, Tason acted as a guide to the venerable master, proposing various retreat sites for the coming rains. He was relieved, then overjoyed, when Ajahn Sao chose to enter the retreat at Baan Cave, situated in a forested area scattered with flat, outspread sandstone boulders about an hour's walk from the village. Long before their introduction to Buddhism, the Pu Thai people upheld an ancient tradition of ritual spirit worship. They paid obeisance and performed sacrifices to benevolent ancestral spirits and to the guardian spirits of the forests. Ancestor worship was so ingrained in their character that the spirit shrine became a central feature of home life. Families presented daily oblations to placate long-dead forebears, actions believed to protect the family, the house, even the village from unpleasant occurrences, including the unpleasant consequences of neglecting that sacred duty. If things went well, that meant the spirits were happy with the family's efforts. Neglecting the rituals displeased the spirits, which accounted for why things went wrong. Auspicious days were sought for the start of every endeavor, and propitiatory offerings were made to win the favor of local deities. The deities of earth and sky were not omitted. Due to an intimate association with rice and water, the Pu Thai inherited an age-old saying, "In eating, don't forget the rice field spirit, and never overlook the water spirit that brings us fish." So, while the center of each village featured the Buddhist temple or wat, spirit worship still dominated a major portion of the village's lives. For years, Ajahn Sao wandered through the countryside, enlightening the locals about the virtues of moral behavior and explaining the casual consequences of their actions and beliefs. Ajahn Sao did not deny the existence of spirits and deities. They abided everywhere, in everything: forests, trees, mountains, caves, rivers, fields, earth, and sky. And he was tolerant of belief in non-physical existence. What he opposed was the belief that such entities were the causes, the instigators of human pain and suffering, and the belief that bribes of sacrificial offerings could guard against adversity and misfortune. Local deities and ghosts were as much a part of Pu Thai village life as the sun, the rain, and the morning fog, as inescapable as birth, life, and death. This Ajahn Sao did not refute, but he taught them that every non-physical being experienced the karmic consequences of its own actions. Each was the product of its own karma, such like the villages themselves. Worshipping these beings was, in effect, attributing to them a power that they did not possess. The essence of Ajahn Sao's message was personal responsibility. Pleasure or pain, happiness or suffering, having or lacking, all are a result of an individual's past karmic deeds, combined with one's moral behavior in the present. Preparing Ajahn Sao's encampment for the retreat required the construction of shelters to weather the monsoon rains, a single-room hut for each monk, and a central sala for meals and recitations of the monastic rules. Paths for walking meditation needed leveling, and latrines needed digging. With joy in his heart and a bounce in his step, Tapai's father quickly volunteered his services, cutting and sawing trees for stout posts, splitting and pressing bamboo for floors and walls, collecting and binding tall grasses for roof thatching. Paths were cleared, graded, and swept. Outdoor toilets were excavated and encircled with thatch. By the time Tason and his friends completed the work, a small, orderly forest monastery had been crafted from the jungle wilderness. Spiritual transformation happened gradually for the Pu Thai village. First one family, then another, took the leap of faith. Faith in the protective power of the Lord Buddha and faith in their own moral virtue. Many burned their spirit shrines and objects of ritual worship to ashes. Some were skeptical of Buddhism and hesitated. Who knew how the local deities would react? Might they not take revenge? Naturally frugal with speech, Ajahn Sao used his words sparingly to counter common fears and inculcate faith and virtue among the villagers. In talks that were direct and easy to understand, he taught them simple lessons. To instill faith, he encouraged them to replace the custom of sacrificial offerings with the practice of taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. To inculcate virtue, he encouraged them to observe the 5 moral precepts: refraining from killing, stealing, lying, committing adultery, and taking intoxicants. The villagers learned that by guarding their minds and actions with simple yet potent practices, and thus avoiding behavior harmful to themselves and others, they would acquire the means to protect themselves. So as to help them overcome and rid themselves of fear, Ajahn Sao taught them the protective power of meditation. First, he guided people in paying homage to the Buddha by chanting the Blessed One's virtues in unison. Once their hearts were calm and clear, he proceeded to allay their doubts and worries, speaking simply and concisely. Don't be afraid. As long as you meditate, focusing on Buddho, 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 the spirits will never disturb you. Everyone falls ill at some point in life, but it's nonsense to think that sickness is caused by ghosts and spirits. Our bodies are constantly decaying and renewing themselves. The human body and illness go hand in hand. It's pointless to ask your dead relatives for help. Far better that you practice meditation and dedicate the merit of your actions to their spirits. Then you both will gain some benefit. As custom dictated, the villagers, especially devout Buddhists, reserved part of each lunar observance day for religious activities. They went to the monastery to offer food, help with the chores, listen to Dharma teachings, practice meditation, or undertake a combination of these activities. Tapai, now 13 years old, often accompanied her parents on early morning hikes to the forest monastery at Ban Huay Cave. Being a girl, however, she was not allowed to mingle with the monks. So, when Ajahn Sao spoke to the lay people, Tapai sat far in the back of the sala, just within earshot of his soft, mellow voice. Seated behind the women and peering over her stepmother's shoulder, Tapai absorbed the atmosphere and the teachings. She, like all the villagers, had inherited the local cultural beliefs as a matter of course. Her worldview was colored by the same historical background. Yet, though she knew of the existence of spirits since early childhood, Tapai was not a superstitious person. She preferred instead to see cause and effect relationships by means of common sense. So, while her family kept a small shrine honoring the spirits, Tapai's natural inclination was to embrace the Buddha and the truth of his teaching. Thus, from an early age, Tapai felt the lasting influence of Ajahn Sao. She responded to his simple, down-to-earth manner, his even, serene temperament, and his noble and dignified appearance. He inspired a deep devotion in her and left an indelible impression with his character, his words, his very presence. Even though she did not really make an effort to focus her mind in meditation as he instructed, Tapai sensed in her heart that Ajahn Sao had attained perfect peace. Soon, Tapai felt the subtle force of Ajahn Sao's personality pulling her in a new direction. She first felt this pull on one memorable occasion. She heard Ajahn Sao praise the women folk for their general support of the monks. The daily offerings of food and other necessities were not only beneficial to the monks, but they were also a blessing for their own futures as well. He then added, briefly and emphatically, that the virtue of generosity was nothing compared to the virtue of renunciation practiced by white-robed nuns meditating in the forest. This remark stirred Tapai at the core of her being. The nuns, said Ajahn Sao, were a fruitful field of merit for all living beings. With that pointed pronouncement, Ajahn Sao had planted a small seed in the young girl's heart that would one day grow into a majestic Bodhi tree.